what are we doing in order to recover? And what do we mean when we say recovery when it comes to muscle building versus, in this case, we're talking about, like, I'm comparing and contrasting this against the strength training, which is I see a lot of people doing. Again, like I think I used the example at the beginning of the 5x5 routine. The 5x5 routine is good, and you can build muscle and strength by doing this for sure. It's an awesome way to format your workouts. And one of the things you're doing is you're hitting the things multiple times per week. So, but you're also giving yourself much time in between in order to recover that. So, like, whether it's a Monday, Wednesday, Friday routine, or a Monday, Thursday, Saturday, or something, I've got lots of time in between. But if you're a person that likes to go or wants to build muscle and you like to go to the gym 6 days a week, that's not going to be the right routine for you, because you're not giving yourself the recovery that you need in order to, again, recover back to baseline and then build on top of that. So, if we're looking at this sort of in kind of the specific on the recovery side of things, I think you look at, okay, so tension, load management, right? Recovery. How do you set that up really well for muscle building through the week? And the old body split routine works really well here. And on the hypertrophy side of things, if you're breaking that up to where you're hitting the same body part or the same muscles 2 times a week, or sometimes even more than that, depending on, again, what the intensity is like or what the specificity of your exercise selection has been like, you can get a really great result from that over a long period of time. Just look at the bodybuilders. That's what they're doing constantly. They're never really working into, specific strength or power phases. Yeah. They're applying the same principles consistently over and over and over again. And they're not using maximal loads. They're using submaximal loads. They're working they're working through tempos that create that tension over time. And it's not that they're not strong. These guys are fucking strong, right? The bigger, more seasoned, especially when you're looking at bodybuilding versus like physique. I'm not saying physique guys aren't strong or physique people aren't strong. To look at them over time, they are strong people, right? But they are not getting in there to find out what their 1 rep max is on a regular basis. They're managing, like, what, again, is that 65 to 85%. So if I'm doing that 6 to 12 repetitions, I'm doing maybe 10 and leaving 2 in the tank. I'm never really fully going to maximal failure on every single set. Why? Because I've given my body enough tension and load over time in order for it to respond appropriately, recover appropriately, which leaves me room to go back and hit it again. So again, if you're not building muscle, you should be looking at, like, what am I doing with my rep and set schemes as it relates to my loads? Am I providing enough stimulus? Am I providing too much stimulus? And how would you know that? Well, it goes back to those percentages.
So, and I think too, that's a good thing you pointed out, as far as the person who likes to go to the gym, 5-6 days a week versus the person who maybe can't get in there that often. So I think that's where you also really need to analyze, like, what's a realistic routine for you to maintain. And we've talked about consistency and all that. But if you are someone who's going to go 6 days a week and you're pushing to too high of an intensity, right? And you're doing muscle groups where you're going to hit them multiple times per week, you really need to make sure you're load managing the intensity, the load that goes with that, which, is a lot tied to intensity, the mechanical tension, as far as like the time under tension. Like, if you're doing really long tempos, really long eccentrics, like, those things take a long time to recover for. So that person, it might be more about getting a lot of training volume in if you do enjoy training often, so that you can recover from. But on the other side of things, if you're someone who can really only train like twice a week, like, ramping up the intensity portion of that, ramping up that you have a 3 to 4 days in between each thing to each body part to recover from it, like ramping up the amount of intensity, but also the time under tension and all those other aspects, and getting more proximity to failure, that might be the way you want to go too. So that's also another thing to consider, like, which person are you, and are you actually implementing the direction that you probably should be for what your routine looks like. So
yeah, I think so. Again, breaking it down, like, I'm glad you brought that up. Like, look, I'm not going to the gym 5 to 6 days a week. I just don't have time to do that. Okay, well then manage the tempos and the time under tension in the 3 days a week that you have appropriately. But it doesn't mean going, again, you need to look at, like, how many repetitions am I actually doing? How much volume of work am I actually doing? And so I think a lot of people sacrifice the intensity piece. They go straight to that, like, I got to be lifting more weight. And then what you see is the the rep schemes, they start to drop down. And as that happens, then what you've done is you've taken volume out of the workout. So you've sacrificed volume for intensity. And so there's a balance there.
Yeah.
And if you've been in that same routine where it's just been like, I know what I know what I can get 5 out of, and I'm working more like the 5 to 8, and I'm not getting the hypertrophy gains. Well, then back that off a little bit.
Yeah.
Like take a little weight off the bar, push more towards the 10 repetition to 12 repetition area. It won't take you more time, right? Like in reality, you are spending more time under tension, but your recovery periods between sets and likely,
Should be the same.
yeah, they're going to probably be about the same. So if we're resting, again, like if you're in that 1 to 5 routine, then you're probably resting somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 to maybe as much as 5 minutes, right? To recover in order to be able to get your 5 again, right? But if you're bumping it up, like again, with regard to volume and dropping off your intensity a little bit, you won't need as much time to recover, right? And you can still push the same amount of load and get that same time under that mechanical tension at a load that will elicit the response that you're trying to get in basically the same amount of time. So you're taking rest times, or you're decreasing rest times, and you're increasing the volume of work that you're actually doing. And that might feel weird. Like the weight that you have on the bar, the weight that you have in your hands is going to be a little bit less, but you should be able to get back under that bar, over that bar, or that weight in your hands a little quicker than you were before.
So I think with the recovery piece, there's kind of 2 aspects of it. There's the, what's your programming like? What's the other 2 factors we talked about? What does your time in the gym look like? So those are like the inputs for growth. But then on the back end of the recovery, like it's all the other things we've talked about. We talk about all the time, like what's your sleep like? What's your, what's your nutrition? What's your daily movement like? Those are all the other things that you need to be managing. Like if you feel you're in the gym stuff is great and you're still not making gains, like you reached the first 2 metrics we talked about and then the first half of the recovery, then what does that back half look like? What are those later inputs look like?